on to Conference Stream B. My name is Katharine Rietig. I'm Professor of Sustainability and International Politics at Newcastle University in the UK. And together with Christina, co-founded and co-lead the Better Climate Governance Network. So for our second breakout session, we have a second conference stream that hopefully appeals to you if you are less familiar with the global stocktake itself, but are interested in accountability also in relation to countries, the national level, and how they can address climate change while being held accountable to their commitments based on the Paris Agreement, especially also by civil society actors. Arti has given us some great introduction on accountability. So as a refresher and some additional aspects, I'll share some details on accountability as it's conceptualized in the academic literature around global governance and sustainability. So there are different or diverse conceptualizations of accountability and can be seen from a political perspective, a social one, market, democratic, stakeholder, technical, focusing on networks, and also multi-level governance and administrative accountability. And most of these concepts imply a somewhat different characterization of the accountability relationship between societal actors. The one is called to account, the accounter, by another one, the accountee. So the nature of this relationship can range from a hierarchical to a horizontal. Hierarchical relationships are often framed as the principal agent type, such as between voters and the government in political accountability, or between the executive government and its agencies in administrative accountability. Horizontal accountability, on the other hand, refers to relations among peers, stakeholders, or other countries and contexts where there are no formal hierarchical relationships. So by asking 6 questions, we can identify and also map the key elements of accountability relationships. First, who is accountable? Second, to whom? Third, for what? Fourth, through what process behavior is reported and accountability assured? Fifth, by what standards behavior is assessed? And sixth, with what effect is someone held answerable for their behavior? So there are different aspects to accountability. One is democracy, we see control, we see performance, and also a question around justice. So what does this mean for the UNFCCC in implementing the Paris Agreement? In the global governance of climate change, we can differentiate between the national level and the UNFCCC level. At the national level, we have hierarchical accountability, as the government is accountable to the voters, who in turn can hold the government to account over meeting or especially not meeting targets and its approach towards the implementation of the Paris Agreement. So there's also the option of litigation and court action, what Arti mentioned as well in her presentation and in response to our questions. Once the Paris Agreement is implemented into national law. So the same holds also true for subnational levels, depending on what country you're looking at. And very important aspect is public awareness and also public support, because the public can put pressure on politicians through their voting behavior, especially if climate change and the Paris Agreement becomes relevant for an election, might even vote them out of office. But also through, and that's the more common one, vocal demands through the media and also demonstrations, all kinds of activism and public action around the cause to address climate change and to increase ambitions. So on the UNFCCC level, this is somewhat limited to horizontal or peer accountability, where countries can hold each other accountable through more softer approaches that are mostly normative, such as the global stocktake process. And these softer approaches focus on measuring, reporting, and verification of emissions and or financial targets, and then put pressure on countries through the media, again, through activism, demonstrations, and other naming and shaming activities. So there's no hard legal repercussions that countries would expect to happen, as opposed to the more national level, where you have courts that can hold them to account. So countries and non-state actors, such as civil society organizations, can also employ boomerang tactics by approaching another country that, for example, provides development assistance or has close trade or other economic ties, and gets this country to put pressure on the first country that's not complying with its commitments. So there are different strategies around there, and more or less possibility to hold countries to account, and also links of transparency, especially around the horizontal UNFCCC aspects. So for the breakout groups, we have 3 guiding questions. One is, how can accountability be strengthened outside the UNFCCC process, especially thinking about those different tactics, boomerang tactics, activism, thinking about possibility of litigation, other legal action. What strategies are available, and are they achieving their goals? And how can we maintain and strengthen especially public support, which is a very important aspect to accountability. And since this was relatively generic or abstract, what we really wanted to do for the breakout groups is to think about examples from your own countries that you're familiar with, the media and civil society organizations. And it would be great for all participants if you could share your own experiences and what you've observed from others, your ideas about improving things, with as many examples as possible.